there's a side of the fan base that wanted Petzing gone, and they're not getting their wish here, Johnny. So, there's a little disappointment from them, but Petzing's return, it needs to come with a boosted passing attack, a consistently boosted passing attack next season. Like, that's really going to be, his first priority and his main focus this offseason.
Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson, the marriage that every Chicago Bear fan presumably wanted has become a reality. Bo Brock, Johnny Venerable here, PHNX Cardinals. Drew Petzing, no longer in consideration, we assume, for any remaining jobs. That could change, of course.
Yeah.
But his loan interview has came and went with Chicago, and they have said thanks, but no thanks. What do you make of the fallout with Petzing and the Chicago Bears, Bo Brock?
I mean, he was just bested by the top coordinator on the market, Ben Johnson, right? Despite his offense falling short and him dialing up a wide receiver pass in a key situation in the fourth quarter, they could overlook that, right? A lot of Ben Johnson's risks worked out to the tune of him having a top 5 offense seemingly every season, including, the top offense this season. As far as it gets to Drew Petzing, the gang's officially getting back together for year 3, right? Isn't everybody excited about that? I mean, we're not going to overlook it on, of course, your Top Cards podcast, that he's a polarizing figure, that a lot of people point their finger at Drew Petzing for the inconsistencies of this offense. But there's a side of the fan base that wanted Petzing gone, and they're not getting their wish here, Johnny. So, there's a little disappointment from them, but Petzing's return, it needs to come with a boosted passing attack, a consistently boosted passing attack next season. Like, that's really going to be, his first priority and his main focus this offseason and going into the regular season next year. I mean, the run game, I think even his biggest haters can agree that it's solid. It's been solid in 2 years, but the passing attack is in needs of shots, explosives, and points, and it needs to see an uptick next season.
We're going to do our best to have Jonathan Gannon back on the show when we head to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. It was one of our favorite things we did last year. Gannon, to enjoy it. Before that interview last year, though, we had a chance to briefly connect with Drew Petzing, and JG said something that I thought was pretty humorous. He's like, just get him on camera, and Petzing's, a modest guy. We will do our best effort. If Gannon allows it, if Petzing's willing, I would love 10, 15 minutes with Drew Petzing at the Combine this year, because I think that, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say this fanboy podcast, rah, would do Petzing some good, but I do think it would be a good perspective for all of us to be able to have a chance to connect with Drew, because there's a long time between now and OTAs and minicamp and certainly kickoff next fall. And just to have some clarity as it relates to what happened, maybe what went wrong, where they're correcting some issues. And Gannon will shed light on that, and so will Monty Ossenford. But I do think that having Drew on the show should be and will be a priority for us, because I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because you know why? Because he is so flippant thought of highly by JG. Jonathan Gannon is so committed. Kyler Murray loves Drew Petzing. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, this is a disaster. Like, would I love the Cardinals to, like, ramp it up and get a hotshot coordinator like a Cliff Kingsbury type?
That.
Yeah. Of course, I'm being tongue in cheek here, but I do think, like, right now there's just so many, like, competing priorities with Kyler Murray's status, Drew Petzing's status. You have to win next year. It just is not the right time to bring in another coordinator. There's so much overwhelmed momentum one way or the other. You have to give yourself opportunities to change. And here's what I'll say, and this is the best compliment I can give Drew Petzing. The offense needs to evolve. It needs to improve.
Yeah.
The Cardinals' offensive line play has never been better in my 30-plus years as a fan of this team. Like, go and look at the pass protection ratings composite. So we know the Cardinals, they have a top 5 rushing attack. I pulled some numbers today. This is from Hogue NFL, not to be confused with our guy Adam Hogue. So they took scores from PFF, ESPN, and a couple other outlets, and they basically determined the Cardinals had the 7th best pass protection in the NFL last year. And like, fair or not, that's Drew Petzing. His offense is predicated on not having negative plays, and a high-end run game. So, again, like we talked about last week with Michael Wilson, can you just squeeze a little bit more out of the orange? Can you get 6 to 7 more passing touchdowns? If so, that would change it dramatically. If you're Jonathan Gannon and you pivot off of Drew Petzing, sure, there's a chance you could improve. There's also a chance that those numbers turn downward dramatically and everything could come down. So I do think, yes, this is maybe safe and conservative, but I am trying to be a brave soldier here, respectfully, this offseason as it relates to what Drew Petzing can hopefully achieve next year.
Thank you for putting on a brave face for us today. We really appreciate that. I do disagree that like it could plummet. Like I don't think the valleys are that deep. Like I think we've seen, you
don't think if they brought in the wrong coordinator could just be turnovers and sacks?
Oh, no, I thought
that's
you were
what
talking
I mean.
about Petzing.
No. I'm talking about if they change to
grass isn't
Kubiak,
always
Joe
greener.
Blow.
Right. Yeah. But I think that really for Drew Petzing to kind of change his haters and their feeling about him and to make year 3 prove that Jonathan Gannon, Monty Ossenfort, and Petzing himself were correct, and him continuing on here is that the continuity produces the results. The consistency, the continuity of year 3 under Drew Petzing and the second full offseason of Kyler Murray proves and the results produce 25, 28 points per game. And it will do I think 3 things for you, right? Not only does it produce a playoff appearance for the Arizona Cardinals and a threat in the postseason if they're running about 25, 26, maybe 28 points per game. Kyler Murray will be proven to be back on track if the offense is operating at that level of play consistently. And, I think with one of the more balanced attacks, because that would prove that the passing attack is where it needs to be. The run game's always been there. That Petzing gets more interviews. He'll got one this offseason. If the Cardinals offense comes out and is a top 10 group to pushing top 5, Drew Petzing is just going to get more interviews.
The Cardinals, like they're doing with their draft and develop strategy, they're doing it with their coordinator group and their position group. It's like, how do we keep this train on the tracks? How can we avoid a 2022 season? Like, they're not saying that publicly, but that's what they're thinking. How can we give ourselves continual opportunities to compete every single year? And you need continuity and you need roster stability. Yep. And big swings like Steve Keim used to make, sometimes they'd work with D-Hop and Chandler Jones, and sometimes they'd be disastrous. They'd be humiliating, right? With Rodney Hudson's acquisition and all the disastrous draft picks and Hollywood Brown. The Cardinals are trying to be a safe, quiet, conservative franchise right now. And they have been noisy my entire adult life, save for a stint with Ken Wisenhunt and Bruce Arians, right? So I can understand that. I think we've reached a ceiling with Drew's offense that we've talked about, and I have too much confidence and respect for Jonathan Gannon that he doesn't sit Drew Petzing down and say, where were the explosives, my guy? What happened in the second half against Carolina? What happened in both instances against Seattle? It's not just a line of scrimmage thing. There's a lot of people who are like, upgrade the offensive line. I'm sorry, folks. The offensive line was not the problem this year. It's a disconnect between the play caller, the quarterback, and potentially the skill players. You got to figure that out. You got one more year to figure that out. Otherwise, guess who's not going to be here? The quarterback, maybe the play caller, and some of the skill players. Or they're going to be, asked to learn a new system, a new scheme, right? So that's how the NFL works.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
No, but they've improved enough on paper to where they're going to say, okay, that was 2024. Now in 2025 weeks, you were here. We're expecting to be here. And that marginal improvement should lead to a postseason berth. But they gotta come through. They gotta make it happen.
It should, as far as should, no, it needs to, right? It absolutely needs to make that jump. And I'll continue to point to Baltimore. Like when you see the passing numbers from Lamar Jackson from last season to this season, it's the number. It's astronomical. Like where he goes from 24 passing touchdowns to 41. Mm-hmm. Like things need to open up in that drastic of a way. And I know that,
Baker's another example where it's just like overnight.
And it's just like the big shots downfield, Lamar was able to find them. Like, and I don't know if that's just the comfortability, if it's just, he just became one with the offense. That needs to happen between, it's Monken and Jackson and Lamar, and it needs to happen between Petzing and Kyler Murray.
I agree with that. I think with Drew Petzing, again, I think it would behoove him to get out in front of some of this here locally and talk about where the improvements need to be. I've done a sicko deep dive, speaking of being sickos, on Marvin Harrison Jr. and external national media takes. And while people are disappointed, the general consensus, at least during the first couple weeks of this season, or the first couple months, I should say, he was asked to play, I'm paraphrasing here, the sacrificial X receiver. Like, I just defended Drew Petzing. That is not good enough, Drew. That is not a fireable offense, but that's a hand slap defense where you take the 4th overall pick and you sacrifice him for your scheme. Build your scheme around Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride this offseason. I love Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is year to year with this franchise until he can win. Trey McBride's about to be paid. He's an elite player, and Marvin should be an elite player within the next 12 to 18 months. Build your offense around those two guys. Not a 28-year-old running back, right? Not a quarterback that you feel like, you like, but you don't love necessarily. You go with where your bread is buttered, man. And there were too many times at the end of last year, Bo, where it was like, where is 85? Where is 18? What are we doing giving the ball to DeMercado? What are we doing going underneath here? That can't happen. Those are indefensible, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's, obviously, like a player develops, the play caller needs to develop as well. Like Drew Petzing entered as this OC at 35, relatively young for play callers. Not an excuse, but just as you look at it, like needs to trend in the right direction and to not make the same mistakes, going forward for the Cardinals and going up against opponents. So like, he's got a tremendous opportunity here. They've got a good core of playmakers. I think Kyler's the guy that can make the throws. You just got to put him in a position for success.